Hello and welcome to Talking Bottom. I'm Ange Pearson.
I'm Paul Tanter.
And I'm Matt Brooks.
We are very lucky to be joined today by a pair of British alternative comedy legends. They rose to fame on the live circuit in the 80s with appearances on TV, on Saturday Live, and star turns in shows such as Carrots Lib, Blackadder, and Girls on Top. They starred in their own sitcom, police spoof Lazarus and Dingwall, and became familiar faces in every household through a series of very successful Carling Black Label adverts. They've improvised opposite raw sex in the film There's No Business, and starred on stage in Tom Stoppard's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. One was a regular in London's Burning, and the other on Whose Line Is It Anyway? But they'll always hold a special place in our hearts as the pair who consistently guested in many episodes of The Young Ones. One of these men ordered Captain Blackadder to be shot in Blackadder Goes Forth, and the other had his eye shot out by Eddie Hitler in Bottom Episode Apocalypse. Mark Arden and Steve Frost, welcome and thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you talking bottom with us today.
Good to be here.
It's always nice to talk about bottom this time of day.
It is. It's our favourite thing to do is to talk bottom, of course. You're well known for your double act. Before we get to bottom, we'll talk about the Oblivion Boys. When did you guys first meet, and can you tell us about how you started out in comedy?
Yeah. Well, I'll start, Mark. I'll start, Mark, and you can interrupt double act wise. We met at drama school. We both went to the Guildhall School of Music and Drama in, what was it, 1973?
Yeah, I have to stop you there, Stephen. It was the Guildhall School of Music and Drama.
And drama, sorry. and we met when we were auditioning to get in. We both there on the same day, and we were auditioning. We'd never met each other. The story is that I went in and did what I ever did, my Shakespeare, and then I came out and Mark went in, and we were just standing on the staircase just talking, and we got on very well with each other. And then one of the tutors came out and said, could you two, and another guy called Joe Ginge, could you stay behind and give feed lines to other people's audition pieces? So we were asked to stay behind from day one before we'd even got into drama school.
Because someone had their wallet stolen, wasn't it, Steve?
That's a and we just started riffing, and then once we got to drama school, we had a ball, we just had a laugh, and we formed a group called the Five Erics, which was a cabinet to get our equity cards.
Yeah.
And how many people were in the Five Erics?
I know.
We started off with 4. That was the joke. There was 4.
We were called the Five Erics because we used to do all these student union gigs, and so teachers' balls and stuff, the students' union people used to get us in there. And we said, yes, 5 of us, because we only got paid in beer, you see. That was
they paid us in beer. Yeah. You turn up at 8 o'clock in the evening, and they say you're on stage at midnight, and we go, well, that's your mistake, because
no, that was a way of getting directions at the time, you see, because they were affiliated with the Variety Artists Federation of Great Britain. So all you had to do was get contract. You didn't need to necessarily get paid. Yeah. So we all had equity cards by the time we left drama school.
By the time we left drama school, we had equity cards, so we could get jobs straight away, because it was a catch-22 situation. But that meant that Mark and I and some couple of other guys had been doing comedy, stand-up comedy, sketch comedy, double act comedy for nearly 3 years before we had become professional actors.
And Jerry, who we were at drama school, he just mentioned, he was actually in the firing squad in that episode with Frosty. And the other
really?
Show.
Yeah.
Again.
Not so Lee Corns, of course, was the other.
Of course.
Yeah. He went to university. We dedicated ourselves to the art of acting and comedy.
So did you guys go to drama school?
Which comes across in his performance.
Did you guys go to drama school intending? Did you want to pursue serious dramatic careers, and then you found you had funny bones? Like what made you sort of shift into comedy?
Well, I like to think that actually we have managed both in terms of the career, but it was always nice to know that comedic thing was always there. And we were very lucky that we just happened to chance upon somebody who said, "Hey, why don't you come down to see this thing called the Comedy Store in London?" And that somebody happened to be Nigel Planer, because I was doing a production of Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, which is what you had to do when you left drama school then. And if you hadn't done at least 7 productions of it, because it was like an apprenticeship, you might as well give up if you hadn't been offered a part. Steve, did you ever do it?
No, as you know, I don't like musicals.
She can't sing, isn't it? Anyway.
Just to go back, I was more of a TIE person.
Theatre and education for the uneducated among
your
us.
question, Matt, about being funny. We went to drama school to train as actors, Shakespearean, Chekhovian, TV, straight drama. That's what you study there. But it just so happened that Mark would be sitting next to me in all our lessons, voice lessons, movement lessons, and this other guy, Jerry Gittins, who was in the firing squad with us. We were very, very naughty. And things like would happen, like we were doing Chekhov. I love Chekhov, but and I've done Chekhov. We've both done Chekhov. We did them in our final year productions, and we were doing the Cherry Orchard, and the teacher, the lecturer said, "Now, not a lot of people don't know that Chekhov is very funny. There's a lot of comedy in Chekhov. Okay, Steve, Mark, so-and-so, let's do this scene." So we started to do this scene. After 2 minutes, she stopped the scene and said, "It's not that funny." I said, "You started it."
That's excellent feedback.
We always matched each other, you know.
It was a very conventional drama school training in the 1970s. We left in 77. So this was, having had all that previous
So when did you guys team up as the Oblivion Boys then, and how did that fit with the WoW show as the Steps group, and in terms of like the timeline? When did you pair up for the Oblivion Boys?
It was Nigel Planer happened to be visiting someone who was in that particular show, and there was a kind of charity evening, and he did Neil. He was already doing Neil way before the young ones, and there he was with this. It's fantastic. He was a mate of Anthony Head, the lovely actor. And we kind of became friendly. When we got back to London, he said, "You've got to come and see the show. Why don't you?" And that's when Frosty came down from Hull, because he'd moved up to Hull to do serious, acting with the
Plater. I was doing the serious stuff.
The Alan Platers and
core acting.
And so we said, let's get our act together then, an act together, not the act together. And we ended up turning up at the Comedy Store one day as the first time, on the gong.
Fantastic.
No, I mean, we were out of work for actors for quite a while, weren't we? As well, a couple of years. We were just sitting around each other's houses, flats, just bantering, and then went down. And the banter we did in pubs and in our front rooms, we put on stage, and then I'm
going to say the name. We did used to smoke drugs.
Yeah.
As they were called in the 70s. They were called.
I never inhaled. I
Yeah.
used to just go and play the saxophone in the corner.
You didn't inhale, but
you mentioned that you went and.
So we were called ourselves Oblivion
show.
So we reached Oblivion.
Yes.
I did wonder what Oblivion was from. So it's that moment when you're high on.
Yes, but we were a little bit too high. We couldn't be bothered to write anything else down. We'll pick it up in the morning and see if it made any sense.
A lot of that. And a lot of it was green ink. I don't know why.
You mentioned that you did the Gong show at the Comedy Store. Did you survive your first gong when you first went on with your act?
We never got gonged off.
I think we must have done, because we kept being asked back.
We got asked back, and sometimes we do 2 shows a night. But Mark, I don't remember, Alexi Sale, who was fantastic and very supportive, and Tony Allen, very, very supportive, because there were very few double acts around.
Yes, that's true.
We weren't particularly political, like a lot of them were, and like Ben Elton and that. But they liked what we did. And when we went the first night, we went on the Comedy Store. Very frightening. Lots of you have to read the room and play. Work really hard. And Lexi Sell came after we came off. He came up to us and said, "Oh, that was great, lad." She said, "You got to remember. I remember my first time down here, and I came off, and I was fucking brilliant."
Was the Gong Show always like a rite of passage? Like you have to do a Gong Show before you're on as a main one?
Yeah.
At the time, but then after a while, once word of mouth was taking place, that there was this culty thing going on in this strip club somewhere in the middle of Soho, it became very successful. So therefore, the Gong thing was put to one side, and people wanted to hear the acts rather than along there just to be disruptive, because you'd still get a lot of drunk people just shout out Gong for the sake of it, because they weren't even interested in seeing what you might have to present. But we did initially go on there and shout very, very loudly, rat-a-tat-a-tat, and making out that we were carrying out a siege. There were a lot of sieges
we
going
took guns on stage and pointed at the audience to show them.
Alexi Sales told a story about that, and it went down really badly. Did your siege do better?
Well, our siege involved various props, etc., and guns, etc. But it literally was. It was a device to make sure that you could be louder than them until they went, hold on. Although they did a joke. They did a joke in there. You know,
so everybody's freeze, put your hands in the air, shut up, and then do the routine with pointing. Because you had to. We dropped the guns in the end because it was, violence and all that sort of thing. But it was also this time of the Iranian embassy siege, wasn't it? That was on television live, and so we thought there was one time at the comic strip.
Yeah,
we said we'll come in at the back of the theatre, so it looks like a real siege, which you just couldn't do now. And the back at the Raymond Review Bar, the comic strip, there's me and Mark. We've got balaclavas on and toy guns that look like real guns. And we're there, and we hear, I think, Alexi, please welcome us to the Oblivion Boys. And we open these double doors. There's a big bouncer there. He turns around, he put me around, he's got, Marco, you can't come in here.
We've been caught with a few props in our things, especially going up to Edinburgh Festival sometimes. You bung all the props into the bag at the last minute and go on with hand luggage. Then you forget that there was security at the time. And you'd have a very weird selection of things.
Yeah, when they flew us to New York for the WoW show, and I was a puppeteer and we had guns, and the bloke just opened my suitcase. It was a suitcase without any wheels. And there's this puppet I used to do and a couple of guns for the things like that. And he said, what do you do? And I went, I just picked up the thing. It was a glove puppet. I went, I'm a puppet.
Yeah, he got pulled over though, because if you remember, Steve, you actually put the luggage through the X-ray machine. And that's when you got pulled over, because all this puppet looked like this.
There's this dead body there.
A tiny body. It was rather macabre. He said they're opening up. Expect
children and weapons.
Around that time at the Comedy Store and the comic strip, there was a lot of double acts. Did you guys ever catch Rick and Ange's double acts, either 20th Century Coyote or the Dangerous Brothers?
Yeah.
What was that like? What was that like seeing it live?
Rick and Aid and Neil and
The Outer Limits, Peter Richardson.
We saw them mostly at the comic strip, didn't it? Because they were part of the comic strip, and Mark said Neil was doing stuff there.
The Dangerous Brothers. Then you do remember seeing them do that act?
Absolutely. They were totally inspirational to us when we were, when we first realised that there was a club for people to be doing stuff rather than the staple diet that we'd grown up with. It was only so many years back, even before I went to drama school. I was working in a working men's club in Nottingham, doing the bar, just watching all the same types of people that you'd see on the and then so many so many years. There was
an inspiration to us, because I remember me and Mark just looked at each other and said, we didn't know you were allowed to do this. We didn't know you could do this. A square, B wear what you like and talk about what you want and be funny in any way you want. And so it was like a relief when we just said, well, listen, we can do anything we want. Has to be funny, of course. Mark, I had to tell him that a lot. Has to be funny. You can't just walk on stage and talk. It has to be funny.
Did you guys meet Paul Jackson early on in those early days? Then was that part of how you were cast for the young ones? And I know you did a turn on Carrot's Lib, etc.
Lib, yeah.
Through Paul?
Yeah, he told us he came down to the Comedy Store and saw us, didn't he?
Yeah.
And when Ben wrote,
you never know who was watching, who was in.
Rick, they said, well, there's always two policemen, there's always two dustmen, and Lise Mayer always told me, she said, well, get the Oblivion Boys to do that because they're really good. And Paul said, well, no, I've seen them down at the thing, but he booked us first for the young ones, was it? And then we got Carrot's Lib after that while we were filming the young ones, and Carrot's Lib was live.
We actually
did Carrot's Lib, which was the first time we've seen on TV, and then the young ones came. But we'd filmed that months before.
That makes sense. Yeah, because I think Carrot's Lib was October 1982, and that was actually live. So it would have been that you banked the young ones earlier that summer. Then
I'll tell you a little tale that I don't normally say. And Steve, you put your head over your ears if you want to, but I haven't told you this before.
Put my head over my ears. I have a bleak nostrils.
Put your head up your ears, or wherever you keep them. That's it. Oh, you can't see. Good impression. Ben Elton, in the time that we were doing the Comedy Store. He was still doing a lot of stand-up at the Comedy Store, and the others had gone up to do a more structured show at the comic strip. But Ben was always talking about the young ones. I've written a sitcom.
Yeah. Yeah.
For months. So we would have conversations in the broom cupboard. How's it going, Ben? Oh no one's taking it up.
Yeah.
And so they were telling us about this thing called the Young Ones, because Lisa Mayer, Rick's girlfriend at the time. They were very much involved with all writing this thing together, but waiting for someone to pick it up. So we had wind of this thing for a long time. Now, you probably know the story behind the idea that apparently Peter Richardson was supposed to be playing
Mike.
part of Mike.
Mike.
And so they would then, when all that fell through for whatever the political reasons were or personal reasons, whatever.
Swear word. It was a swear word was the reason. A very strong swear word.
So what happened with it? Yeah, so the call went out, to try and find. Now, I got a call from an agent saying that Ben has been in touch with my agent at the time, saying, Mark, we really want to see you for the part of, don't listen, Steve.
I know this story. I know this story.
I told you, did I?
Oh, it's getting right there. Every time.
They really wanted to see me, and I'm going. I'm in Sheffield doing Cinderella with Bobby Nutt.
One of the five Eric, Bob McCulley.
Yes, with my one of the other guys.
Doing a double act with somebody else. Well,
I said, well, what is it? He said, we've actually got the pilot. We're making the pilot, looking for someone to play the part. Not Rick and not Nigel. And I said, but I can't get away with it. So I couldn't get down for the interview. I was in Sheffield doing panto, doing a matinee. So I never managed to see it. Years later, I ended up being directed by him in We Will Rock You. And he introduced me to the entire people, saying, this is Mark Arden. He's going to be playing Pop, that was actually originally played by Nigel as well. It's all everything.
Very interesting.
So Ben introduces me to this West End cast as I'm coming in to take over from Nigel's part. And he says, this is Mark Arden. Yeah. He turned down being in the Young Ones. I said, turn it down. Like, as if I'm going to say, turned it down. That's why Paul Jackson he knew us by then. And it was almost like
if you'd have got that part, I wouldn't have been in it, and I wouldn't be talking to you now.
No,
you guys are in it more than. I think you guys appear as guests more than anyone else. I think you're in 7 episodes. I've got them written down which ones you're in. You play a pair of dim policemen in Boring. It's your first appearance.
Oh, the policeman,
the party gate crash isn't interesting. The grave diggers is a blink and you miss it in Flood, but also as sort of the entourage of the people's poet in the comic book scene.
That's right.
The headless ghost, which is my favourite one. The card playing sort of people spies, that's right, and phone up cutaway that interacts with the main plot in a weird surreal way, and manure salesman in Sick. Well, I don't know if you're a manure salesman or you're just dropping off a lot of manure in a dodgy way, but
and I was cornflake man as well. I'll have you know.
You were,
yes,
you were
cornflake man. Yeah,
don't forget.
Now, the cornflake one was that shot live on the day because it's kind of like an insert, or was that like a?
It was shot, and then they just took the still out of it, And the great thing was, again, Steve, I'm sorry to tell you this, all these years later, I was paid for that because it was in the title sequence, so I got another episode fee every time.
Oh,
who's doing the voiceover? Who's doing the voiceover? Allianz Insurance now today. Yeah.
So I guess, what was your impression at the time? I guess doing the policeman, the Boring one, the commentaries of the episode reveal that you were allowed to kind of do a bit of your act and put a bunch of your stuff into it. Did you get paid a little bit extra for putting?
No, we didn't. No? We talked about that, but it was such a great idea because Ben and Lee said, "Look, do that bit about the girlfriend and all that because it's so dressed as policemen." And everybody remember when me and Mark walk down the street here when he comes to see me. Often I would like, you're the two coppers from the Young, it's just outrageous. So it was really a gift for us to do that. We later on we start saying, well, we were doing our stuff, sure we should get paid for writing, but it was such a great opportunity and it opened so many doors for us. It was great, and it was such good fun doing that one.
Yeah, it's just really generous of them in that way because we did know them all in that very familiar way, which is really nice. And so if someone sort of says, that bit you do from the so-and-so, it's not like you sort of approaching someone it's awkward or difficult, you say, oh yeah, that could work, and you felt that you were part of a process and they let you just do it. And actually that little sequence, we would do that as an exchange in the set that we might have been doing at the time over that period of time. But it led to people suddenly saying, the two blokes
the two blokes
played the boring policeman. And that's suddenly advertising came our way purely on the back of that.
We did a
And that
Tizer.
led to the Carling.
Tizer. They
Right,
got
right.
there's just two security guards and be in a car park somewhere, and it was I got the eyes because I'm drinking Tizer or something like that.
I's got the eyes because I'm drinking Tizer. I's got the eyes because I'm drinking Tizer. I didn't understand that. Did you understand that? I didn't understand that. Curious noise.
Curious noise.
And over that Tizer, you boys. How we twising their cheeky wisers as Tizer hits our prize ends. Now when we twising Tizer again, we'll keep this Tizer sizing correct so we can go them nice.
And they said to us, could you do the girlfriend, the knee thing and all that? And that's when we said, well, you guys are earning money for doing copyright.
Yeah.
I think we can get some of it.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Tizer one? They asked you to do my girlfriend routine and all that sort of stuff.
It was all the young copywriters of the time, they were brought up on the staple diet of this stuff. It's like
So, like I said, it opens a lot of doors for us. Obviously, more doors for Mark than me, but that's always the way.
It sounds like it was a bit of a blessing for you, Mark, not to get Mike. It seems like you guys were in it almost more than Mike. It seems to have opened up the audience to you guys as well. As you said, it led to things like the Carling Black label adverts later down the line.
I think I've talked to Lise and Nigel about this. I think, and also Mark has worked with Chris, who played Mike.
Oh, yeah, Chris is a fantastic actor.
He is actually he is an actor. 100%. Me and Mark are actors and comedians and performers and improvisers and all the rest of it. And I think it's really good casting in the end. I mean, Mark would have done a great job, but Mike was almost like a straight guy.
I've told you.
He was, to all the slapstick and jokes that were going on, Mark was going, listen, guys, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. If Mark had done it, he would have made it funny and it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have got a second series. There you go. I've said it.
Yeah.
And no Carling Black label adverts as well. So
This was a great casting in the end. He's foil as such.
Yeah. No,
Yes, exactly that. That's what you needed. Yeah.
there needs to be someone as the kind of straight man kind of driving things along, isn't there, for people to bounce off.
Exactly straight, man. You're absolutely right. As someone to bounce off, solid and going. Yeah.
I was going to say on that subject of he needs to be a straight man. Steve and I actually proved that was either wrong or that we actually made a big mistake by not being more defined in our roles as a double act, because we used to interchange all the time.
We were both the funny men. That's
never
right.
knew who was a straight.
We
It was
were
always
both
like,
stupid.
you served me for this joke. No, you served me. So we were doing it as opposed to physically, in the way that Rick and Abe would demonstrate their relationship through physicality and mad slapsticks, and we were kind of as I said, we would interchange. You never quite knew where the song was going to come from or who was steering.
We swapped roles all the time. Laura and Hardy and Laurie. It just went like that all the time. So the audience didn't know, and all that. So I wouldn't go, stop messing about, Mark. I'm trying to tell a story. Never did that. We shot each other in the foot, all the time, and kept it going. Yeah, it's very true.
Well, I guess you kept the audience on their toes by never really knowing which character you were going to be, which attitude you were going to be taking. Because Rick and Aid, they did have a contrast in personality throughout their double act. And, there does seem to be that sort of yin yang, Laurel Hardy element that comes with every double act. So would you say that you both enjoyed being the clown more, and that's why you fell into that dynamic, do you think?
I don't know. It's just that when we first met, we just got on with each other and would finish each other's sentences and swap around. It was never a concerted effort in that way. Apart from when we started doing it, we realized that we were different to other double acts with a straight man and a funny man and all that, little and large and all that sort of.
I think we also brought in a new element, as far as we were concerned, of changing the audience perception of what was real and what wasn't. And often it's very, very exaggerated and obvious that something is going wrong, or that you present something in a way where the audience is with you. Whereas we used to suddenly just go off into an acting world.
Yeah, we did a lot of acting. We would have arguments on stage and people would believe it. Mark would storm off and I'd be left on stage on my own. And the audience would gasp. And then he'd come back on and I'd have a go at him. And people said, what are you going to do? You're going to carry on with it? We were acting. It was a joke.
And then we'd reveal. The reveal would be, I remember doing ludicrous stuff about just breaking down in tears on the stage in the middle of a routine. And it's like, I've just had a phone call before I came on. What happened? Family's been involved in a car crash and all this sort of stuff. And we just play this whole scenario. And, and in the end, he said, oh, my God, tell me you're joking. I said, of course, I was talking about again, I won't do the whole jokes, but, there was a punchline to it. Don't be stupid. Of course, they died instantly, was the punchline. But It was, and then you always go, Jesus Christ, they've just taken us. Their hearts going, this man has just lost something. His family have been involved in this just as a way of, just as a departure. And we started to use that device of breaking the kind of, the conventions of audience performer relationship. If Bobby Ball, he'd be going off, I'm walking off. Oh, don't be so stupid. Come back. As we played it as if we were improvising a real scene,
Don't you ever turn your back on me when you walk away like that?
That's right.
That's when they go, the audience go, well, does he mean it? Does he mean it?
So yeah, we used it in later on. So lots of our double act stuff we kind of incorporated into the Wow Show, which with Lee Corns, Dickhead, and all the rest of it, and Mark, Paul Elliott, who is the other fourth member, and we started to break some of these conventions and rules, and I think we incorporated a lot of this stuff that we would have done in the Oblivion Boys as well.
Yeah,
and then started to bring it into four-man shows, which were very anarchic.
It's more theatrical, anarchic, and like Mark says, it was like the Marx Brothers, which we all liked. We'd just shoot ourselves in the foot. Yeah, come in. Yeah, you can be in the show. No, you can't. Fuck off. And so we can't. What are you doing? What are you doing? Well, that's what we did in rehearsal. It hasn't been rehearsal. The audience just didn't know what was going on.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we would take an entire audience down the route of imagining that someone was being physically abused on the stage. A punter that's come off the stage, joining in. But of course, he was a plant, and that was one of our original shows. It was an absolute plant, and it wasn't until it started getting really nasty that people in the audience would stand up and say, "No, really, I think we have had enough now. I'm not putting up with this. This is horrible. Can leave him alone," type stuff. And then, of course, Paul, who's played this part of the time, this is before people would recognise him because these were early shows. Paul would suddenly go, "Stop! Hold it! I've lost my contact lens." Suddenly, all of us would be looking around for his contact.
When did you last see it?
Yeah, when did you last see it and stuff? And then we were stomping around the stage. Of course, the audience by then is saying, "The bastards! They've just taken us down this line." Someone was just about to go and protect him, and the next minute the rug's pulled.
Yeah. Did you find working with Rick and Ange, just to ask, particularly sort of in the young ones, and then obviously your experience with them in bottom up, did you find that we've heard that they were very, very tight to their script? Yeah, they really did work to the word perfect on their script. Was that the case with the young ones, or did they develop into that with bottom?
Yeah. I mean, the rehearsal, we'd go into rehearsals and they were working at it like Morecambe and Wise, who worked rehearsed for 2 weeks and to get the slapstick and the timing and the joke right. They worked very hard, but it made it look spontaneous. And when we had to do a scene with them, they were very open and accepting the way we worked, and we were vice versa with them, and it worked. It worked. They were very, very tight. They knew what they were doing.
They didn't give any restraints to anybody that was part of their world, but them themselves were fantastically disciplined, fantastically just passionate about the idea. If you're going to muck around like that, and there were a few occasions when they have hurt each other, we all know those things when that clunk has taken place. So there was one episode in Bottom when I think.
Yeah,
he smacked Rick too hard on the watch it. They had to take a break for 15 or 20 minutes because he got a frying pan over his head or something. But watching that kind of expertise, it's not just clowning. They've honed their expertise as well in the young ones because of the stunts that were involved. And of course, the stunt department at the BBC, they must have thought that that was their heyday, because every week there was something else that they'd be asked to do. And of course, they got very proficient at it and very clever, and they could get more elaborate as well. So by the time they started to doing the bottom tours live, I think that's where they really enjoyed it as well. But when you compare the live stuff to either television or specifically TV studio stuff, because all of those shows were done in was it Studio One, Steve? I think it was BBC Studio One. I think so. What the old-fashioned was it? And then something fantastically atmospheric and exciting and real buzzy about doing sitcoms in that type of scenario. But of course, the previous sitcoms had all been very staid and
French doors, sofa, door, kitchenette, nosy neighbour coming in. That all went out the window.
You walk on the set of. You walk on the set of Bottom, and Rick and Abe walk out, and there's no warm-up man, but it's them.
Yeah,
and they were really relaxed, and it's like, Jesus, it's bloody Rick. You can see the audience going. They've actually come out. They're talking to us with handheld mics, and they're going, and they're doing gags, and they're mucking around, and we're ready to go for a take. And they go straight from that, hand the microphone off, and then go into some very, very tightly rehearsed, etc. scene, and you're waiting in the wings to do your bit, and then there's a, it's like, oh, we need to go again, and they come out and muck around with the audience and take the piss out of each other and anybody else, and say, God.
The whole evening was a show in between the takes and all the rest of it, which that's the atmosphere, as you guys know, because you love it.
Do you think they were aware at the time of how much they were sort of with the young ones and then Bottom as well, how much they were pushing the boundaries of what you could do in a sitcom studio?
Yeah, definitely. Well, Mark would know more about it because he did the Bottom ones. I didn't do any of those, but I remember talking to Ben and Rick and Lisa as well. We're just in between rehearsals. They're talking about we're doing something different. We're trying to make something different from the old sitcoms. Terry and June and The Good Life were the enemy, and they want not an evil want to kill. Although there is that scene in The Young Ones where when you're talking about the woman I love, Vivian kicks through The Good Life thing. I hate that woman. It's fucking hilarious. But I actually quite like The Good Life. It's very funny. And Nigel as well saying we're part of a movement because punk rock was going on and when it was, fizzling out a bit. And it's just like we just said, we're trying to do something different to change how entertainment looks. We did have those discussions, yes.
Yeah, I mean, they were very dismissive of sort of conventional stuff, but at the same time, obviously deeply inspired by your Sticktoes and
Oh yeah, they're students of all the classic comedies, aren't they?
Look at Eddie and Richie. It's like when Richie goes when Rick goes off on his monologues, it's straight out of what's the guy's what was his Sid James?
It's very Tony Hancock, isn't it? Yeah,
Oblivion, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
I mean, we will talk about Bottom. We will move on to Bottom, but we wanted to finish up with the young ones, I guess, and then we'll move through the different shows that you guys have been on, because there's so many. I guess, I mean, on that point then, do you feel like the young ones was a sort of sketch show kind of disguised as a sitcom? Do you think they were playing with the form of sitcom to a point where it still fitted within that band? It really did show what you could do in the half-hour format, didn't it?
It was definitely 100% a sitcom, and it broke the rules, because one of the reasons it is definitely a sitcom is because they wouldn't have got it on unless it was based on like a sitcom, because they were so strict. The people, me and Mark for years have been trying to get stuff on, and they would say it's not sitcom format, and the young ones changed that. I mean, it's all gone back now, but yes, it was definitely a sitcom, and I wouldn't call it a sketch show at all, because beginning, middle, and end, plot, and all the rest of it.
It wasn't a sketch show like your Python sort of stuff.
Yeah. No. But there's so many ideas that are crammed into the Young Ones episodes. How did you approach making your parts in those episodes sort of land amongst all of the rest that was going on? Were you directed in that way, or were you able to do your own improvisation depending on what was needed?
They gave us a very free. Paul Jackson was great. The Rick and Egg were.
There's a great team there, fantastic team.
Yeah, do what you do, and I don't remember actually be given much direction at all, because me and Mark were very throwaway in those.
In a way, yeah,
throwaway stuff, wasn't it? And we were
in a way. The thing about shooting things like that, especially in a studio situation, the directors, often people like your Paul Jacksons of the world, are far more involved with the shots and making sure that the joke was going to be revealed
going on in the
audience at home rather than the TV studio.
And they trusted us to do what we did, and
so we kept it fairly low key.
We rehearsed like Billy-O, sitting in the tea rooms and all that. We'd always mumble the lines to each other all the time. And so when we went on, we just go, here, where do you want this vignette? Well, I don't know. Where do you want? It was all very throwaway like that, and they just captured that moment. So yeah.
Does the longevity of the Young Ones surprise you guys? Here we are, over 40 years later, still talking about it, and people still love the show, and people are still discovering it. Did you ever expect that when you did it at the time?
I don't think you ever even contemplate that kind of stuff at the time.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
You're just riding with something that's taken a big part of your life that you suddenly have been involved with, and then you move on to the next thing. I mean, Steve and I used to diversify our work a lot, because we weren't absolutely we weren't big household names. We weren't sort of people who would your faces behind Rick and A. By then they could dominate anything, and if they were going to do something, that would be very much that they'd be in the title roles. You know what I mean? But when so Steve and I would just carry on to the next show, and then you'd realise that people actually
Well, yeah, when you
So
take
and their children's and their,
yeah,
you know,
when you take your kids to school, then the parents start torturing, and then the kids start doing punchlines from the show, and then it just goes on and walking down the street. No, at the time you're just doing a gig, and you knew it was different.
Yeah.
You knew it was going to be good, but you didn't know whether it was going to last because
I think those things become apparent.
This is show business. To give you an example of that, I've been in a pub, and I've seen the lead guitarist of the Undertones, who used to live around near where I live. And I went up to him and I actually got to know him. I said, you changed my life with Teenage Kicks, that record. I could not stop playing it. And I said, it's not really punk, but I've still got it. And I play it every day. And he just went, oh, I know. People tell me this every day. I'm not in the band anymore. I'm a painter and decorator. I have been in pubs. I've been in pubs with Mark, and people come up and they say, you changed my life. I was 12 years old. I didn't know I could laugh at like that. And that happens on a very regular basis. But you didn't at the time. You didn't know. You just doing your thing, man. Just doing your job.
As well as the young ones, you've been in a lot of our favourite shows, such as Blackadder, where Mark, you were a Spanish guard alongside Lee Corns, and Steve, you were a firing squad commander alongside Lee Corns in Blackadder Goes Forth. So my question is, has Lee Corns stopped stalking the pair of you finally?
Well, he probably is, but we can't see him. He's only 5 foot, and we're both over 6 foot. A draft come past your knees. You know it's Corns. You're looking for a gig.
You'll be very pleased to know that we're all very good chums. It's great. Yeah. Sometimes we genuinely can and do sit and chat and talk about, do you remember that time? Because you need each other. I mean, God knows if Rick was still alive, the stories that he would be telling with all immediate circle.
The great thing about Lee was
necessarily even
into alternative comedy, because he was one of the first compers at the Comedy Store, and so so we got to know each other's humor and all that sort of thing. So when we did the Wow show, it was like Mark said, we incorporated a lot of Oblivion Boys stuff, and then we start doing the TV, and we're also in the comic strip films. We're in the comic strip. Lee was in those as well. So as Mark said, the main guys were doing all the hard work and just asked us to come in and do a bit, and it was a privilege. It was fantastic.
Yeah. Well, if you say it's only a bit, it's still one that really stood out. Is there anything that you did knowingly that made those small parts land when everyone was screaming for attention in that show? If you're doing a guest spot on the young ones, you may be thinking, oh, I want to stand out or something. Or did you just kind of feel that you were supported by the team and stuff? And you did.
Well, no, because like on all those shows, Blackadder as well, when me and Mark with the 2 medieval guards or whatever, we always had our own little, like 30-second, 40-second spot. It was just us. It was always like in the young ones, we were just given our little bit to do, and we did it. So it's almost like a guest spot in a way, wasn't it, Mark? Yeah. It wasn't like we did a long scene. Well, I mean, you did in Bottom. You did a very long scene on the stairs where you come back with the eye patch and all that stuff. But again, it's just the 3 of you.
I think obviously you realised you were taking part in something, and if you were going to be asked back, you needed to have been doing whatever it was you did the last time. Don't try and do anything else because it's working. And so there weren't like post-mortems or anything. And when there was read-throughs of the next episode, etc., and you went to rehearsal studios and started to rehearse the half-hour shows, no one's talking about, now, that thing how you did, as I say, there wasn't an awful lot of direction. So rather than
we were booked for what we did,
trying to be seen or noticed, no one did that. They played their role accordingly. And I'm sure that we would have been told one way or another, hey, could you bring it down a bit? Or, oi, this is your show.
What about other episodes and stuff? Were you ever booked ahead of time? Did you know, I'm in 3 episodes of this season, or was it one at a time?
I think it was one at a time, wasn't it, Mark?
I don't know. I can't quite remember the schedule. But I mean, when we did the Skinhead Gate Crashers, for instance, that was one of the few ones that we did that was partly on location, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because most of the show was in the studio, but there were.
Yeah, you've got the outside, haven't you? Of the
outside of the house.
Yeah.
House in
Bristol.
Bristol, yes, it's Bristol.
By the laugh.
Me and Mark dressed as skinheads with the
we had the
braces, the short hair, and Mark had a tattoo on his head, Tanuk, which when you look at the mirror says it. And I said to Mark, and we just forgot about it. I had love and hate on my fingers and like that. And I said, and they're filming, it's getting darker and darker and darker. And I said, look, I've got to go for a pint. And we're out in the country, just outside Bristol. And I said, let's go and find a pub, for God's sake. And so we're walking down the road. We think we're Ponzi actors, comedians. We forget we look like our bastard skin.
Yeah.
We forgot that. Mark's got Tanook on his head.
Certainly,
And we
certainly
walked into this
those
pub,
were low.
and the landlord said, I'm sorry, lads, we're closed. I said, it's only 9:30. He said, all right, what do you want? And he turned around to the woman behind him and said, call the police. And I said, no. We hate. Look, skinheads. I said, we're actors.
It sounds like, from what
Inside,
we
we were
obviously heard,
performing. They thought we were the real thing.
can you
Difference
tell
in-
us about filming for Blackadder and how were your experiences on that?
Well, very different mood completely, wasn't
Then they let it was 2 guards or whatever. They'd let us do it. Again, it was Ben Elton writing with what's his name. Ben knew us, and he'd say, "Well, if it's 2 guards, get Mark and Steve to do it, and I'll write it how they perform." So it was just handed to us, and it was never cut or told to do it a different way, as Mark said. It was just
I can't remember which one I did with you, Steve, but I did one with Lee as well, didn't I?
Yeah.
And we were marching or something like that. And that was the only time I saw Mr. A. He sort of not intervened, you know. He's got every right to do what he did, but he was worried that we weren't marching in unison and hadn't quite exercised it properly, as if it was like, you know, in that particular era, this is how they would have marched, and you have to, and the foot has to come. You know, that shows you his kind of precision, but it wasn't. We weren't endeared to that kind of thing quite.
Yeah.
Same way with Rick and Nigel and all that lot in totally different way of going about stuff.
Lee hinted once that Mr. A, as we shall refer to him, was very, very specific about certain things and the way he wanted certain things.
Totally.
Yes.
Well, I did the Laughing Man on the Train with Mr. A. I don't remember Mr. Bean when
Mr. Bean. Yeah.
When Mr. A was Mr. B, and all I had to do was laugh and get on his nerves. And I knew the writer. What's the guy from the?
Was it Richard Driscoll?
Yeah, Richard. Yeah, who was in that theatre company? What they called, blah blah. Anyway,
I remember.
I thought great, and I knew the director as well. The director knew me, so I thought great. And all I had to do was laugh. A week's rehearsal.
Wow.
The laugh, laughing.
You're laughing now.
Still get the repeats. It was incredible. It was like working, I think, with Charlie Chaplin, the way that he's so precise about the comedy. Not like Rick and Aid would rehearse their slapstick and their lines. That was like Morecambe and Wise, get it right to be funny. It was so technical, it wasn't funny whilst rehearsing, because we had a laugh rehearsing, and it wasn't funny when you recorded it. But Johnny Punter loves it.
Steve, do you remember that time we were in the rehearsal studios? It was West Acton. The BBC used to have they were called the
Is this the Wilfrid Bramble story?
Yeah, tell the Bramble story. You know Wilfrid Bramble. You know,
he was Blackadder. He was
very, you know, he was quite
up a sleeve, and he was that really famous actor playing wit. You know, he was in Thorn of Crowns and all that sort of stuff. Really famous.
Tell the tale, Steve.
But me and Mark are sitting there with our scripts, and we're playing a couple of guards again. And sitting next to us was Wilfrid Bramble from Steptoe and Son. Now, we were big Steptoe, like the young ones. They were really into that, you know, that working class, down heavy, and all that. You know, play for today sort of. Wilfrid Bramble, who played, you know, the old man in Steptoe and Son, and he's got the part of, I don't know what part he had, and we're sitting there, and Mr. A's rehearsing and all this, and they go over and over the same thing again. Not funny, but you've got to get it right and all that. And then we're just sitting there, and John Lloyd was there. It was John Lloyd, wasn't it? Yeah. And Wilfrid Bramble stands up. He's only little. And he's got such a posh voice, not like when he was in Step. And he gets the script and he throws it down on the floor. He says, "I'm a fucking star. I have never been so shabbily treated in my professional life." And he stormed out. And they have double doors on these rehearsals. And Mark went up to John Lloyd and said, "If Bramble's walking, I'm walking. Come on, Steve." So we both walked out. And John Lloyd ran after and said, "Boys." And we both turned around and went, "It's a joke." Wilfrid never came. We did. Yeah. For one moment, we walked out with Wilfrid Bramble.
never got the chance to work with him. He'd already left. Bramble, taxi.
Amazing. I mean, our listeners will be screaming if we don't ask this of you, Steve, in particular for Blackadder. How many people ask you to say "ready, aim, fire"
every day in the supermarket? And it's amazing. It happens every day. Again, that was a case of Ben. I remember Ben. The scene was written But there's 2/3 of the Welsh were in there. He said, lads, if you want to mess about, if you want to improv, if you want to ad lib a bit, and we did, and it worked. Bit of a gabble of me, it's all there, and all that, but with structure, and they just let us do it, and it's a very good scene.
That was improv. That's amazing.
I
Every
would have
day.
loved to have been in that particular episode and that particular thing. For some reason, I think I was doing bloody panto in bloody Sheffield.
Well, that naturally moves us on to a section with just you, Mark. So forgive us, Steve, as we are the Talking Bottom podcast. We need to move the conversation to bottom just a little bit.
Oh, okay.
No problem.
So, you, Mark, you did play the gypsy carnival worker who gets very unfortunate encounter with.
Yeah, I turned it down.
Is that right? So, Mark, can you tell us how did the casting come about? Was it another just offer straight out, or?
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah, there was a lot of those shows were like that.
I just rehearsed my ukulele while he's telling that story. Sorry, that's it.
He's not talking about himself. So while I've got the moment on my own here, no, I think that lots of those jobs of that time, if you look to see some of the credits and various things, it's impossible to remember other than the fact that everybody knew each other, and it was a very trusting sort of world then. And directors, they didn't have to be answerable to any suits, etc., etc. And the people who were mainly writing it.
Well, the director was Ed Bye, wasn't it? It was Ed Bye who worked with who was the floor manager from when the original Young Ones.
Stephen, I think you'll find you weren't in it.
Right, let's ask. Shall we ask Steve?
The electric guitar then.
Steve, were you ever on the cards to be in bottom, or were you too handsome and bold and loud to be a part of the cast?
I was too busy touring the regionals, doing a rep.
You were auditioning extensively around Europe.
I was wrestling. No, Lee did them. Then Mark did one, and I don't think there was a part suitable for me. With my.
I mean, it was great.
Again, classical training credentials. There was nothing in it.
It was again.
The carnival work is quite a straight part, really, isn't it? It's not. You're not playing it for laughs. You're angry. You do get some laughs, but it's quite a quote unquote realistic character.
You have to know why your role is there and what is it serving. Well, it's serving Rick to be able to go off in that fantastic monologue to me about about being the swarthy anyway.
Oh yes,
all of his diatribe against me, and then of course he just finishes off with just, can I just have one last go and just shoot you in the face?
I like that. There's a massive hot.
You don't look around anymore, but it was just great being back in the studio, because the last time I've been in a studio with Rick and Abe was doing the Young Ones, and here you were doing the bottom, and by this time they were really.
It's quite a big. It's quite a big set. It was that on location. It was all studio. The carnival bit, was that still in the studio?
I think that was. I think that was in the studio. Yeah. I think it was from any location to a fairground or anything like that, because if you look at it, it's quite simple to recreate.
Yeah. As you say, it was the first time. It was you previously worked with the guys on the Young Ones. What for you when you did Bottom was different on this one? I mean, like certainly you had a bit more physical stuff still on this one, didn't you? With Rick, with being shot in the eye, then Rick poking you in the eye, and then your return later on when you're kicking Eddie in the bollocks.
I mean, I've got a feeling that Rick, possibly, having been shot in the eye, the second thing was, as he's leaning over, that was almost like an afterthought. Hey, why not poke him in the eye as well? Which is one of his classic. He often does it. I think it's even in the title sequence, isn't it? That he goes bam right at the end. So, for all I know, and I'd like to think that was the case, because that's how they also worked as well, And so, I don't know if it was scripted and then he pokes him in the eye in exactly the same way that right at the very end. Would you like? Oh, by the way, just before you go, would you like to kick Eddie in the bollocks?
And you're so polite and cordial. I love it. I would actually. Thank you very much. Yes.
So politely, I say that, and I think that again, that was kind of extemporized as opposed to the script has to be like this. It was.
Yeah.
So something I like to do with our guests, which is take it to a pinch of salt. It's very silly. I'd like you to think of what would happen to your character after the credits have rolled. Now, you say like you're trying to get £300 to get your eye fixed. Do you think you got your eye fixed for such a low, reasonable price, or was that just a lie to steal the money and you went off to do something else?
I ended up with the girly mag as well, didn't I? The girly
Yes.
mag.
Yeah.
Girly world.
I'll have a quick look at the girly mag and then decide.
Yeah, and buy 10 more girly mags instead.
You're already half blind.
Why not?
Goodness knows. What would he do? Yeah, probably go and buy himself one of those hooking a duck stalls or something like that.
I think there's such a hole in the logic that you let him shoot all those things before you charged him as well. That makes me laugh. Like, you owe me 50 quid. Why don't you charge him first? It's mental.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, it's like a random figure, isn't it?
Yeah.
How much would you have paid that amount of money? On a
Mark, you alluded to it earlier, and your first scene in Bottom is a scene that's become quite infamous among fans, as the original broadcast had Richie first being creepingly nice to the traveller before his attitude turns and yells about thieving bastard jippos. Of course, now it's a word audiences shouldn't condone, but it was written for the comedic contrast, showing Richie being a total hypocrite, and it was later dubbed to yobbos in subsequent broadcasts and for DVD. Were you aware of the whole dubbing thing, and is it something that you get asked about much?
You know what? That's a first for me.
Yeah, that's the first time.
Really?
I was never aware of that.
Oh, did you?
No, that's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Pick up the BBC and call them a bunch of dubbos.
For that, I'll get the 45 quid. Oh, I love you Romany types with your legendary campfire hospitality and your quaint insistence on settling bills immediately. And thieving bastard jippos! Someone swiped my wallet!
And here's the redub version.
Thieving bastard yobbos! Someone swiped my wallet!
Yeah. So
Hierarchy in the BBC at the time, or when? When are we looking to see when that was?
For the VHS released shortly afterwards, all subsequent rebroadcasts, he goes thieving bastard, and there's quite a bad dub, though it is Rick's voice going yobbos over it.
Yeah. I can tell you now, it wasn't Rick's voice. It was me. I did that.
I hope you got paid for that.
It repeats for that, Mark.
This is a job for Steve Frost. The one word.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that? I mean, obviously you're just hearing about this now, Mark, but the dub is something that fans kind of, we have sort of. Was it the right call? Because obviously Jippos is a racial slur, but within the context of that scene, it shows Richie up to be the horrible racist that he is. That he turns and he's what his true feelings are, and it doesn't work with yobbos, does it? Like it just doesn't play the line right.
I just find it really extraordinary to imagine that is one example of something that could or was changed, and yet there must be so many examples of stuff going back to in television that where do you start? Where do you stop? There's a bit getting political now. You also like the literary people, when you have to change certain things in books and things,
and the violence that was going on in Bottom as well.
The
clapping, and that which you can actually see,
it's funny you say that, Steve, because people often, they'll complain about violence on TV, but then they'll say something like, "Why don't you read some Shakespeare or something?" Sort of forgetting that has
well,
and all sorts of stuff.
Quite likely. I mean, Rick and Aid were obviously very socially and politically aware and very smart and astute people, and you almost guarantee that perhaps there is a lot of underlying sort of ideas behind some of their silly throwaway stuff, and actually some of it is quite pertinent, and they were perhaps dealing with a lot of those issues. And as you say, because of the hypocrisy, it's a perfect example about how you could show that any form of racism or anything else. I mean, the sexism and stuff that was right. Everybody, where would you stop with something like Bottom? It's so offensive in so many ways, and yet it is representative of those characters because they are characters who don't see it, wouldn't see it, can't see it.
Yeah, I often the Richie and Eddie aren't meant to be characters you look up to.
No,
they're not. They've not got attitudes and things that you want to aspire to. But they, I fully think that it shouldn't have been dubbed, and I think there's a lot more, warnings before shows. They reflect the attitudes of the time. But the whole point of it is that it is sort of having a go at that attitude, isn't it? It's showing Richie up. Like your character is the winner ultimately in that episode.
Yeah, I'm with you, Angela. I agree, and I'm sure the rest of you. Yeah. I think.
But I do appreciate it is a racial slur, and some people I'm sure would be offended by it. It's a tricky one to call, but I just don't think the dubbing should happen. I think it's changing comedy history, therefore, and that's what I don't like about that.
Fair enough.
So, guys, you've both worked with Paul Jackson and Ed By often. Also, legendary director Bob Spears, who did series 3 of Bottom, directed Lazarus and Pinball. Is that right?
Yes, he did indeed.
What do you think is the reason the 80s and 90s were such a golden era for comedy?
Well, I think comedy, TV comedy was up for change. You know, like in music, punk came along. Comedy, we came along, and something has to change. And also, the weird thing is, those 3 directors you've just mentioned had all worked previously on shows that we were trying to fight against. The Two Ronnies, Paul Jackson was on the Two Ronnies, for God's sake. Bob Spears directed Dad's Army. Now, I love Dad's Army, and they all directed those shows which the younger ones was trying to get rid of. So you had the combination of the old and the new, and it worked because they had the experience of working in that sitcom situation. But with the new stuff, it's like the old punk bands getting a heavy rock and roll producer in. They know what they're doing. They want to do something different. So the alchemy turned out to be just right. And I think at that time, it's like it always goes in loops, comedy, art, whatever. Every 10 years, there's a change. People get fed up with what's just changed and they want something new, especially the younger people who come through, which we were young then. I think it wasn't just because the early 80s, you know, in the early 70s, there was a change. In the early 60s, the 60s, for God's sake, there was a change. 50s, there was rock and roll. So it always comes in a loop. And we have to be at the beginning of the loop.
Yeah. Definitely.
We have to be at the beginning of the loop.
The directors
at the beginning of the loop. We have to be at the beginning of the loop.
They definitely had a fantastic. Their back catalogue of stuff that they've been involved in, because they were that much older than the performers and the new writers. And as Steve says, you know, you've got a band and you're going into the studio, you normally get someone who's had some fantastic experience of being producing and stuff. So, and it's exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
And they understood their stuff, and they were very much more into the idea about, well, we'll do all the technical stuff. We know comedians. We know how they work. I mean, Bob Spears, for goodness sake, look at the BAFTAs he's won. He's worked with everybody from Please to the Ronnies to, you know, the girls.
Spice Girls even, isn't he?
Spice Girls, etc. But, you know, I'm talking about Dawn and Jenny, etc. You know, all of this. I mean, it's just endless. And all of those people associated with that stuff had at one stage, you know, worked their way through the BBC, and
they had the guts to take it on.
Where they were.
Paul Jackson was a very, very brave man. They call him a maverick. He'd done the Two Ronnies, for fuck's sake, but he was a maverick.
I mean, I hope you're not saying that you don't hold the Two Ronnies in great affection in some way.
Well, I always think of me as Ronnie Barker. Let's put it that way. You're more my producer. My producer said.
Well,
absolutely, but I mean, comedy does have that cyclical nature. But I do think, as you're saying, I think that, you know, the older, you know, more experienced crowd can teach a lot to the younger crowd. The younger crowd are emulating what has gone before, but they're trying to do something new, and that's where comedy is a superbly beautiful thing, because it's not like any of it's gone from the past. We use it and we build on it, and we definitely can see Laurel and Hardy influences in Rick and Aid. And what we sort of wish is that where's the next Rick and Aid? Where's the there doesn't seem to be a new wave. Certainly on TV, there's plenty of people at the Edinburgh Fringe who are doing incredible live clowning work, you know, but they're not getting the commissions on telly. It seems that's what's changed.
But double acts, there aren't. I mean, Rick and Aid, again, they had the opportunity, did they not, to go and do Waiting for Godot and things like that, you know.
They did.
Really based on, in fact, Steve and I, we ended up doing Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
Which one were you? Can you remember which one you were?
I'll have to have a look at the book.
On stage left, I remember that.
It's about the nature of a relationship, and so if you've got two people that already have something that's going on, some chemistry of some kind, then it's the perfect idea. You're saying, where are the double acts now? Not because where are the double acts to do two-man shows or whatever, but the stand-up is so prevalent in the way that it needs a shake-up. It needs a break. It's very cozy and sort of very it's a bit too comfortable at the moment, I think.
Yeah.
So there are definitely character acts and double acts and all kinds of different sketch and everything going on at Edinburgh Fringe. I just don't think that the commissioners are taking a risk in the way that, as you say, Paul Jackson was brave. He took a risk back then and wanted to put the new talent on the telly, and there just doesn't seem to be that same push to take risks because the budget's been slashed.
No, you're right. They're taking a very the cozy, safe.
And like you say, the cancel culture and political situation has changed as well. Because I know you were up in Edinburgh. I was up in Edinburgh this last year, and I saw some great stuff. But you just go, that's not going to get on, because it would have done 20 years ago, but not now, because they're not. And also the people, the producers and the commissioners are so much younger than us now. They were maybe not even brought up on the young ones, they were even young.
Yeah.
Not even on their thing. So now they've got their own different Gen Zen agenda. Yeah, somebody write that down. That sounded good.
It's not so much an agenda, I think, it's just taste, isn't it? But unfortunately, Paul Jackson said it. He said there was a young commissioner who said, the characters haven't learned anything. This isn't, dramatic development. And it was a sitcom. And Paul was like, they're not meant to learn anything. It's a sitcom. It resets, So if you're up against that, that's why sitcoms are, the taste has changed to comedy drama, hasn't it? Because apparently we want to be able to binge stuff and go on the journey with a character as opposed to see them fail every week and start again, Taste change. But we were lucky enough to see your improv last year at the Fringe, Steve. When we were up there with our podcast with Lee. And of course, your improv is second to none. You're in Whose Line Is It Anyway? But what is it about not having the script that appeals to you so much?
Mark
is that your preference?
Mark will tell you, I haven't got a very good memory. I can't remember lines very well.
He's a lazy.
I'm a lazy actor.
He could have been one of the greats. But no.
We used to improvise. I think
the last thing Steve learnt was Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, and I think that must have
took it out of me.
That was in 1986.
That's a lot of words. That was a lot of words to remember. Again, who wrote Rosencrantz? What's his name? Tom
Stoppard.
Died recently. Yeah. He told us off for being too funny. I said to him, "Look, you're missing 3 gags on this page. I can get 3 laughs here if you want it."
Let me tell you a story about the late Sir Tom Stoppard. When we were doing that in Nottingham, to start with, Nottingham Playhouse, then it went out on tour around Britain, and then we ended up in the West End in the Piccadilly Theatre for 6 months or so. And so it was good laugh, and it was, fantastic fun to be doing, but also really good play. Lionel Blair, he was in it with us. And he played the player. So we were about 18 months with Lionel Blair on tour. But the first time we met Stoppard, he came up to Nottingham to see how we were doing. And he didn't really want to kind of give away anything about his baby, this show that he'd written. And it was the 20th anniversary of it. The producer, myself, Steve, and Lionel, and Sir Tom Stoppard, or Tom Stoppard as he was then, were sat in the Buttery Bar one lunchtime. And he was just very, very, very kind of dismissive of the casting to our faces. So I'm sorry, chaps, but I don't really know anything about this alternative comedy, and I'm really worried that that this is sacrosanct to me, that these words. And so you're not going to be. Have you acted before? And he's doing all this type of stuff. Then he says to Lionel Blair, he says, "Lionel, I know you've been around for quite a long time, but forgive me, but you really are a hoofer, aren't you?" And he just kind of relegates into this like some bloke that sort of does showbiz dancing, and the Steve and me some rarity that cropped up in some and it was very, very weird. And even the director, who Peter Jones at the time, who had cast us, and he's just introduced us in really good. We think we're going to have a bite to eat, a sandwich and a cup of coffee, and say, "Come and see the rehearsals, see how we're doing." So it was all a little bit cool. It was just kind of frosty silence, Then the stage manager comes up and she says, "Ready to start rehearsal again in 5 minutes." And we said, "Okay." Steve stands up and he says, "Don't worry, Mr. Akeborn, your play's safe with us." Lionel stands up.
The best double take I've ever seen. He went,
yeah, it was a double, triple take. He broke his neck. He's going,
It sounds like you should have done a Wilfred Bramble.
All
You
those
should have done a
sketches.
Wilfred Bramble and walked out. Never been. I'm a star.
Yes. Oh, we did.
But going back to your original, Angela, when you said about improv, the thing is, when me and Mark, we used to banter, and Mark used to write stuff down, but we used to just remember what we'd said. And when we had lived on stage in the double act, we'd remember that it went well. It would go in the act. Same with the Wow Show. Rehearsals weren't rehearsals. We'd sit around talking and bantering and say, well, I'll come on as a priest, you come on as a monkey. Yeah, then what? And that was about it. And then you'd improvise on stage, and that improvisation would become the script. Eventually it would get written down in the end. But so improvisation has been going on all the way through that. We used to sit around bantering and remember stuff and remember jokes and ad-lib. And when we ad-libbed in the double act, we'd remember which ad-libs went well, and that would come in the act, and the act built like that. Same with the Wow Show. We'd sit around saying, what should we do? And then we'd just banter and do jokes and puns and remember it. And then on stage, something would come into your head. So it was 25% improvised, but remembered and then done again, and then improvised again. So we've been improvising all our lives. So when I got asked to do impro, I turned up on the wrong night to the Comedy Store. I thought I was being compere. It was an impro night, and Paul Merton said, look, we're one down, do you want to join us? And I didn't know that the producer of Whose Line was in the audience.
Fantastic.
Name now, I can't remember his name. Terrible. Anyway, afterwards he came off, he said, do you want to do a TV show? I said, yeah, and that was it. Voila.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. That's incredible. I mean, you are a fantastic improv. Do you like improv as well, Mark, or is it more the sketch that appealed to you?
A long time ago, before Whose Line Is It became the TV show, there was a certain amount of improv going on, but
hold up the cue card for you, Mark.
And there was a big one. It was called an improthon. It was at a West End.
Right, yeah.
And so all the big guns of the time were there, and I was in the wings, waiting to get out to take the thing out of the basket and take the thing out of the basket. There also used to be one in Covent Garden, which was quite a one. So I did that.
Yeah, the Rupert Pupkin Collective.
That's right, yeah. So I started out doing a few of the gigs that Steve did, but then I started to sort of err on the side of I'm taking too long to walk on. And by the time I've thought, I think I know what to do, someone's already done it, and it's finished, and they've done the punchline, someone else is picking an idea out there. And in a way, I think I kind of just not chickened out, but I found that it wasn't quite for me. And so I went off to pursue a Shakespearean career.
And what about the return of the
fantastic, and he is, and all those guys, and I take my hat off to them. It really is terrific, and it's only as good as the night you go to, but majority of the nights have always going to have some crowning moments in them anyway. Yeah. But Frosty's he has become very, very exceptional.
It does spoil you though, because somebody gives you a script, and if I have to learn it, it's very, very difficult. Yeah. And plus, you can usually think of something funnier at the time, playing the room, and all that sort of thing.
Steve and I, last year, you were in Edinburgh. You said you saw Steve and the improv troupe he was with. Well, for 3 nights, Steve and I resurrected the Oblivion Boys in Edinburgh last year, and I think you must have come up after.
We missed it. We were gutted. How was it?
Yeah. How did that go?
We managed to get through it, but on the subject of remembering lines and stuff, it's really weird because the muscle memory, you imagine it's still there, but actually to execute stuff, and especially as we'd written kind of something newish as well. But we just ended up looking longingly into each other's eyes, thinking, I don't know what's coming next.
And because the audience would think I said, Mark, honestly, I have absolutely no idea what comes next. And he'd look at me and say, Steve, neither do I. Big laugh. And I had a little book, and I'd say, we've done that, and they're just laughing. So we got away with it.
Yeah,
people are enjoying it clearly. And have you got plans to do any more? Is anything else coming up that we can look out for you both at?
Not at the moment, no. Not unless you've got something in mind.
Let's go back to Fringe. Why not?
This podcast thing is
the money, I think, is the problem.
No, I think the days of going up and doing stand-up, when you look at the guys that still do it after decades and decades and decades, they really do. Obviously,
it's hard work, isn't it, Mark?
But whether or not you can change to the changing audience's requirements and needs, I reckon that a lot of our stuff, wouldn't necessarily hold up anymore. Yeah. And yet,
well, you both, as far as we're concerned, you're both still legends. You both still got it. We'd love to see you perform together again. But we're running out of time, guys. We've taken up so much of your time. Thank you
it's
for
been
joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
We'll definitely keep an eye out for when you are next together. And are you still drinking Carling Black Label?
We never did, you know. We
never did. I'm quite a bitter man.
found it loathsome. We've got some great Carling Black Label. That's joke stories we can tell you. Some of the stuff that went on there, I tell you. But yeah, no, that was there were good years. That enabled us to go and do other things. You see, that's the most important. You just need that bit of security.
Well, we'll all go and crack open a can of something decent.
Mark, Mark, would you like to tell? We did 7 years, 4 adverts a year for 7 years in the old days when you got good money. Mark, after 3, would you like to tell these people how much we got paid each for that in total? 1, 2, 3, $250,000. Still got it. Still got it.
on that bombshell.
Absolutely. Yes, but I invested mine.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, guys. It's been lovely.
Nice
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
And I'm so pleased there's loads of fans out there that are interested in this. It's
Yeah, great.
Good to know.
There really are. Thank you so much.